Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're going behind the scenes of GitLab Inc.'s quarterly report for the period ending October 31st, 2024. We've got their official Form 10Q filing with the SEC, which, for those unfamiliar, is basically a company's report card on their financial health and performance.
Exactly. And it's a particularly interesting report card to examine in this case, because GitLab is a company that plays a significant role in how software is developed today.
Yeah, you mentioned that GitLab is kind of a big deal in the software world.
Mm.
But what exactly do they do? What makes them stand out?
Well, imagine trying to build a house. You'd need different tools and specialists for each stage, right? Architects, plumbers, electricians, and so on. Software development is similar, but GitLab offers a single platform that covers the entire process, from writing the initial code to testing for security vulnerabilities and deploying the finished product.
So it's like a one-stop shop for building software, all under one roof. That does sound convenient, but how does this single platform approach translate into actual success? How are they doing financially?
From a revenue standpoint, they're doing incredibly well. Their revenue jumped by a staggering 31% compared to the same time last year, reaching $196 million. That's a pretty significant leap.
31% is huge. What's driving that kind of growth?
A large part of it seems to be the increasing demand for their platform. They're attracting new customers and also seeing existing clients expand their usage. It's worth noting that the number of high-value customers, those who spend over $100,000 annually, is also rising. This indicates that businesses are not only adopting GitLab, but also deepening their reliance on it.
That does point to a healthy level of confidence in what they're offering. But I know we talked about this report being kind of like a company's report card. I'm thinking no report card is perfect, right? What are some of the challenges or concerns that jumped out at you?
You're absolutely right. There are always areas for improvement. One thing that stood out to me was a material weakness they identified in their internal control over financial reporting.
Okay, so what exactly does that mean? What's going wrong?
It boils down to gaps in their IT systems. Specifically, there seem to be issues with their program change management and user access controls for financial systems. Think of it this way. If you're making changes to crucial software that manages financial data, you need tight controls to ensure accuracy and security.
So there's a risk of things slipping through the cracks, potentially leading to errors or even security breaches. That does sound concerning.
It's definitely something to watch. Now, GitLab has stated that this hasn't led to any misstatements in their financial statements so far, and they are actively working to fix these issues. But for a company that prides itself on efficient software development, this is a point they need to address quickly and decisively.
It makes you wonder if this is a common problem for other tech companies that are growing rapidly. What are the broader implications here?
That's a great question. It certainly highlights the challenges of maintaining robust IT controls when you're scaling up quickly. It's a reminder that growth can't come at the expense of security and accuracy, especially when dealing with sensitive financial data.
So it's a balancing act. They're clearly doing well in terms of attracting customers and expanding their reach, but they need to make sure they're not leaving the back door open, so to speak.
What about the competitive landscape? Who are they up against in this market?
The DevSecOps market is incredibly competitive. You have giants like Microsoft and Atlassian vying for the same customers. GitLab's unique selling point, their single application for the entire software development lifecycle, gives them an edge.
You mentioned that their platform is AI-assisted. What role does AI play? And is that a significant advantage for them?
It's definitely a key differentiator. AI-assisted workflows help automate and streamline tasks, making developers more efficient and productive. This, in turn, can lead to faster software delivery and improved quality. It's something their competitors are also exploring. But GitLab has been a pioneer in integrating AI into their platform. It sounds like they're making some strategic moves to stay ahead of the curve. But beyond competition, what other challenges are outlined in this report? What are some of the potential roadblocks to their continued success?
Well, as with any fast-growing company, managing that growth effectively is crucial. It's a good problem to have, but requires careful planning and execution. Maintaining profitability is another challenge, especially in the face of rising operating expenses. The tech industry is also constantly evolving, so adapting to these rapid technological changes is essential.
That makes sense. Staying agile and adaptable is key in the tech world. But what about the human element? They're a software company, but they still rely on people right there. What are the risks associated with talent acquisition and retention?
That's a key point. They highlight the importance of attracting and retaining skilled personnel in a highly competitive job market. Losing key talent to competitors could definitely impact their innovation and growth. And then there's the issue of cybersecurity threats and data privacy concerns. These are real risks for any company handling sensitive user data.
It's a digital minefield out there. And I imagine those concerns are magnified when you start talking about international expansion. Are they encountering any specific hurdles in that arena?
Definitely. One area that stands out is their operations in China, which they manage through a joint venture called Jihu. It's a fascinating case study in balancing opportunity and risk.
Why is China such a tricky market for them to navigate? What makes it so different?
China is a massive market with huge growth potential, but it's also a complex regulatory environment with concerns about intellectual property protection. And remember, GitLab's platform is built on an open source model, which means a lot of their code is publicly accessible.
So there's a tension there between their open approach and the need to protect their intellectual property in a market that's known for, shall we say, less stringent IP laws.
Exactly. And it's further complicated by the fact that Jihu acts as GitLab's public face in China. Any misstep by Jihu could reflect poorly on GitLab globally.
So they're walking a tightrope, trying to tap into the Chinese market without jeopardizing their global reputation or intellectual property. What are some of the legal and regulatory hurdles they're facing outside of China?
Data privacy is a huge one. You have regulations like GDPR in Europe, which stands for the General Data Protection Regulation, CCPA in California, which is California Consumer Privacy Act, and PIPL in China, the Personal Information Protection Law. These are all aimed at protecting user data and giving individuals more control over how their information is used.
So they're dealing with a patchwork of different data privacy laws, each with its own nuances and complexities.
It's a real challenge for any company operating globally. And with data breaches becoming more frequent and sophisticated, they can't afford to let their guard down for a second.
It seems like they're facing pressure from all sides. Competitors, regulators, hackers, you name it. But before we get too overwhelmed, let's zoom back in on one particular detail that caught my eye. This mention of a dual-class stock system. What's the story there?
This is where things get really interesting.
I love it when you say that. Stay tuned, everyone, because we're about to break down the complexities of GitLab's corporate structure and what it means for investors. We'll be right back with part 2 of our deep dive after a quick break. We're back and ready to untangle this dual-class stock system at GitLab. It sounds like something out of a finance textbook, but it has real implications for how the companies run right.
Absolutely. In simple terms, imagine there are 2 types of tickets to a shareholder meeting, and each type has a different number of votes attached to it. That's essentially what's happening here.
Okay, so there are different classes of stock, and some classes have more voting power than others. What are the classes called? And who gets to hold the super voting shares?
Exactly. GitLab has Class A and Class B common stock. The Class A shares, the kind most investors would hold, carry 1 vote per share. Class B shares, however, get 10 votes per share. These Class B shares are primarily held by founders, early investors, and key executives.
So it's a way for those who were there from the beginning, those with the original vision for the company, to maintain control even as the company grows and more investors come on board.
That's the general idea. It allows them to guide the company's long-term strategy without being swayed by the short-term demands of the market or activist investors. It can be a powerful tool for ensuring stability and continuity, especially in the fast-paced world of tech.
But it also raises questions about fairness and transparency. If I'm an everyday investor holding Class A stock, how much influence do I really have on company decisions? Am I just along for the ride?
That's a valid point. It's a trade-off. On one hand, this structure can give investors confidence that the company's leadership is committed for the long haul and won't be easily replaced. On the other hand, it does limit the voting power of individual shareholders.
So it's a bit of a gamble. You're placing your trust in those who hold the majority voting power to act in the best interests of all shareholders, even if their own interests might sometimes differ.
It's something investors need to be aware of before they buy into GitLab. They need to ask themselves if they're comfortable with this level of control, concentrated in the hands of a select few.
Transparency is key here. Investors need clear insights into how those in control are exercising their power and what mechanisms are in place to ensure accountability.
Agreed. Now, to be fair to GitLab, they've stated that their Class B shares will eventually convert to Class A shares. But this conversion process is structured in a way that still reinforces the control of long-term Class B holders.
So it's not a straightforward one-to-one conversion. There's a bit more nuance to it than that.
Yes, it's a bit more complex than that. The details are in the 10Q, but essentially, it allows those with Class B shares to maintain a significant degree of influence even after the conversion.
It's a reminder that when you invest in a company,
Hmm.
you're not just buying a piece of their financial performance.
Yeah.
You're also buying into their governance structure
Yeah.
and their philosophy on how decisions are made.
That's a great point. Now, moving beyond the intricacies of their stock structure, let's talk about the company's financial performance in more detail. That 31% revenue jump is impressive, but is it sustainable?
Yeah, that was what I was wondering. Is this growth spurt a one-time thing, or are they on track for continued success?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? To answer that, we need to look beyond the headline numbers and dig into the drivers of that growth.
All right, let's do some digging. What's fueling this impressive revenue surge?
Well, a big part of it is the increasing adoption of their platform, particularly among enterprise customers. Remember those high-value customers we mentioned earlier, the ones spending over $100,000 annually? Their numbers are growing, which tells us that bigger companies are finding value in what GitLab offers.
So they're not just attracting small startups. They're winning over large corporations, which is no easy feat. What's resonating with these enterprise clients?
Their single application platform seems to be a major draw. It simplifies software development, reduces complexity, and improves efficiency. This resonates with businesses looking to streamline their operations and get products to market faster.
Their AI-assisted workflows must be a big selling point as well, right? Everyone's talking about AI these days.
Absolutely. AI is transforming software development, and GitLab is at the forefront of this trend. Their AI features automate tasks, help identify potential issues, and even suggest code improvements.
It's like having a virtual assistant for your entire development team. No wonder companies are jumping on board. But this kind of growth often comes with growing pains. What are some of the challenges they're facing as they scale up?
Managing growth effectively is a key challenge. They need to ensure they can keep up with demand, maintain the quality of their product, and avoid stretching their resources too thin. It's a delicate balancing act.
And let's not forget about that material weakness we discussed earlier. Those IT control issues could become even more problematic as the company grows and more data is flowing through their systems.
You're right. It's something they need to address urgently to avoid potential financial mishaps or security breaches down the line. And then, of course, there's the competitive landscape. They're not the only ones with their eyes on this market.
Right, we talked about those big players like Microsoft and Atlassian. How is GitLab differentiating itself in such a crowded field?
Their open core model is a key differentiator. It's an approach that combines open source software with proprietary features and services.
So they're leveraging the power of community contributions while still offering a commercial product. That's an interesting strategy. How does that work in practice?
They offer a free, community-supported version of their platform, which is open source and accessible to anyone. This allows them to tap into a vast pool of talented developers who contribute to the code base and help improve the product. Then they offer paid tiers with additional features and support for businesses that need more advanced functionality and dedicated assistance.
So the free version serves as a kind of gateway, getting people hooked on the platform and building a community around it, and then they monetize through the paid tiers. It's a bit like the freemium model we see in so many apps and online services these days.
That's a good analogy. It's a model that's proven to be very successful in the software world, and GitLab seems to be executing it well.
But we also touched on the inherent tension in this open source model, especially given their operations in China. How are they balancing the openness of their platform with the need to protect their intellectual property?
That's the ongoing challenge for any company that embraces open source. It's a delicate balancing act between fostering community contributions and safeguarding the elements that give them a competitive edge.
It's a bit of a tightrope walk. Lean too far towards openness and you risk losing control of your core technology. But be too protective and you might stifle innovation and alienate the community that's contributing to your success.
Precisely. And this challenge is amplified in China, where intellectual property laws are not as robust as in some other parts of the world. They need to be strategic in how they operate in that market, both to capitalize on the opportunities and mitigate the risks.
So they're playing a high-stakes game,
Yeah.
balancing their open-source ethos with commercial realities and navigating the complexities of international expansion. It's a fascinating story to follow. And this 10Q filing gives us a glimpse into the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for GitLab. Speaking of challenges, we touched on a few earlier,
Mm.
but there's one we haven't explored in detail yet, data privacy. With so many regulations popping up around the world,
Uh-huh.
how is GitLab managing to stay compliant and keep user data safe?
That's a critical area for any tech company these days, especially one operating on a global scale like GitLab. Let's dive into the specific regulatory hurdles they're facing and the strategies they're employing to navigate this complex landscape.
This is where things get even more intriguing. Stay with us as we unpack the world of data privacy and its implications for GitLab's future. We're back and ready to tackle this data privacy puzzle. You mentioned a few acronyms earlier: GDPR, CCPA, PIPL, which I have to admit are a bit of a blur to me. Can you remind us what those stand for and why they matter so much to a company like GitLab?
Of course. Let's break those down. GDPR stands for the General Data Protection Regulation, and it's a sweeping set of data privacy laws enacted by the European Union. CCPA, or the California Consumer Privacy Act, is California's version of data protection legislation. And PIPL, the Personal Information Protection Law, is China's comprehensive data privacy framework.
So 3 different regions, 3 different sets of rules. That sounds like a compliance nightmare. What are the core principles behind these laws? What are they trying to achieve?
At their heart, these regulations are designed to give individuals more control over their personal data. They aim to limit how companies collect, use, store, and share that data. Think of it as giving individuals more transparency and agency over their digital footprint.
That makes sense. We're all generating so much data these days, it's important to have some safeguards in place. But how does this impact GitLab specifically? What kind of data are they collecting? And how are these regulations shaping their operations?
Well, as a platform for software development, GitLab processes a wide range of data, including user profiles, code repositories, project information, and potentially even customer data that's being incorporated into the software being developed on their platform.
So it's not just about protecting GitLab's own data, but also the data of their users and potentially even their users' customers. That's a lot of responsibility. What are they doing to ensure compliance with all these different regulations?
They've implemented a number of measures, including data encryption, access controls, and privacy by design principles, which means they're building data protection into their products and processes from the ground up. They also have teams dedicated to monitoring changes in regulations and ensuring they adapt their practices accordingly.
It sounds like they're taking data privacy seriously, which is good to hear. But even with all these measures in place, there's still a risk of something going wrong, right? What are the potential consequences if they fail to comply with these regulations?
The consequences can be significant. They could face hefty fines, reputational damage, and even legal action from individuals whose data has been mishandled. And beyond the financial and legal implications, there's the erosion of trust, which is hard to rebuild once it's lost.
It's a high-stakes game. And the stakes are only getting higher as data privacy becomes a more prominent issue in the public consciousness. Are there any specific examples of how these regulations are impacting GitLab's operations? Any interesting details from the 10Q that shed light on this?
One detail that caught my eye was their mention of the invalidation of the EU-US Privacy Shield and the uncertainty surrounding standard contractual clauses.
I'm not familiar with those terms. Can you explain what those are and why they matter?
The Privacy Shield was a framework for transferring personal data between the EU and the US, but it was invalidated by the European Court of Justice due to concerns about US surveillance practices. Standard contractual clauses are another mechanism for legally transferring data, but their validity has also been called into question.
So it's become more complicated for companies like GitLab to legally move data across borders.
Exactly. And this has implications for their global operations, especially their expansion into Europe and other regions with strong data privacy laws. They need to find alternative ways to ensure those data transfers are compliant, which can be costly and time-consuming.
It's like trying to navigate a constantly shifting legal landscape, with the rules changing all the time. It adds another layer of complexity to their already challenging international expansion efforts.
It's a reminder that operating globally isn't just about conquering new markets. It's about understanding and adapting to different regulatory environments, cultural norms, and legal frameworks.
It's a lot to juggle. And it highlights the importance of having a team of experts who can stay ahead of these changes and advise the company accordingly.
Absolutely. And it's not just about legal expertise. It's also about having a strong ethical compass and a commitment to doing right by your users and their data.
Well said. It seems like data privacy is not just a legal hurdle to clear. It's a fundamental aspect of building a trustworthy and sustainable business in today's digital age.
I completely agree. And it's something that investors should pay close attention to as they evaluate companies like GitLab. How a company approaches data privacy says a lot about their values and their long-term vision.
We've covered a lot of ground today. From GitLab's impressive growth, their open source model, their expansion into China, their unique stock structure,
Yeah.
and now the intricacies of data privacy. It's been a deep dive into the inner workings of a company that's playing a pivotal role in shaping the future of software development.
It's a fascinating story of innovation, ambition, and the challenges of navigating a rapidly evolving technological and regulatory landscape.
So for our listeners who are now thoroughly informed about GitLab's recent performance and future prospects, what's the key takeaway? What should they be pondering as they go about their day?
I think the most important question to consider is this. Can GitLab maintain this delicate balance between openness and control, between rapid growth and responsible data management as they continue to expand their global footprint?
It's a question that goes beyond GitLab itself. It speaks to the broader challenges facing the tech industry as a whole. How do we harness the power of innovation while safeguarding individual rights and ensuring a sustainable future?
These are questions with no easy answers, but they're questions we need to keep asking as we navigate this ever-evolving digital world.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into GitLab's Q3 2024 report. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.